Welcome to Broke Horse Moms, the podcast for all of us who thought our kids riding horses was just a phase. Turns out it wasn't, and honestly, I am so glad we were wrong. I'm your host, Angie Trueblood, the OG Broke Horse Mom, and I'm here to laugh, learn, and figure out this wild, wonderful sport right alongside you. Let's giddy up, friends. Well, hello, friend. I am trying something new today, and I cannot wait to get your feedback on it. So I realized I spend all of my spare time sitting in my car at the barn, usually working, and I was feeling really crunched for time to record this episode. And I'm like, well, shoot, why don't I just record the podcast? It's a solo episode. I'll just do it in my car at the barn. So we're going to see how this shakes out. I'm trying to be very conscious of your listening experience. Of course, as soon as I hit record, a very low-flying helicopter started flying overhead. So this will be fun. We'll work it out together. You let me know your thoughts. So the focus of today's episode is kind of a hot topic, or I think it could be. We're talking about switching barns. And when I thought of this, I've been thinking about it for really since before I launched the show, but I just haven't really stepped into this space to chat about switching barns as a horse mom and all that it entails. So a couple of weeks ago, I reached out to Christine, Chloe's trainer, and I was like, hey girl, I'm thinking about doing this episode on switching barns as a friend. Do you think that's a bad idea? And her response was, we can talk about it this evening. I think it would have to be very focused. So we're just going to go for it and see what shakes out. Before I get into the nitty gritty of switching barns and some of our listener feedback from Instagram, I wanted to remind you of two ways, one of them completely free, and both of them very easy ways that you can support the podcast. The first is by reviewing, rating, and subscribing wherever it is that you listen to the show. As you know, we are an independent podcast run by me, myself, and I, and you rating, reviewing, and even sharing the podcast with others is super helpful. So if you like the content that you've heard on here, you can pop over to Apple or Spotify, which is most likely where you're listening, and leave a rating or a review. So it's simple to do on Apple. Just look on your phone if that's where you're listening. Click on the name of the podcast and then go to the page where you see all of the episodes listed. You can scroll down and click the little ratings and review section and leave ideally a 5-star rating. I don't want your 4 stars, just your 5s. And if you're feeling super supportive, you can click write a review and leave a little note about what you love about the show. If you're in Spotify, it's fairly similar. You go to the main Broke Horse Mom page, click the About tab at the top, and then click the previous ratings. You'll see them. I think we have 4 5-star ratings on there now. Thank you. And you can rate the show and submit it. So easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It's a great way for you to show your support, and it also lets other people kind of discover the show. The other way, which is not free, but it can feel like free, is going over and utilizing the platform that many podcasters do. It's called Buy Me a Coffee. Now, let's be real, I have plenty of coffee in my life, and so I designed my page to be like, buy me a bag of shavings. But it's a way that you can donate whatever you would like to go towards the production of the show. Again, we're an independent small business. If you go over to brokehorsemoms.com/shavings, you can donate any amount as small as $5, and I will appreciate anything that you throw our way. And I'm going to give a shout out to Hoofprints and Sass, who was our first person who donated to the podcast. I really appreciate your support, and she thanked me for the podcast and the newsletter. So easy peasy to hop over there if you feel so compelled. All right, let's do it. Okay, so switching barns. So we have actually switched barns twice before. The first switch was we had joined a lesson barn, and it was kind of a non-issue when we switched because our trainer was leaving. We didn't really know the owner at all, and we just weren't very invested in the barn. We didn't feel like there was a barn family there. So I don't even know if anyone told us goodbye. We ended up just kind of shifting away from it. Now, the second switch that we made was gut wrenching. We saw it coming for a while. Our trainer was switching up her barn model where clients we would need to lease or own a horse of their own. And for us, there wasn't a great horse for Chloe to ride in the form of a lease. So just adding that much money onto our already expensive bill at the barn just didn't really make sense, and it wasn't a good fit for us. So we loved our barn. The trainer is phenomenal. Was it perfect? No, not at all. I've come to realize, just like humans, no barn or program or trainer is perfect, and neither are we. I think of myself at the barn, and I am an anxious mess watching Chloe ride and do all these things that she loves. I'd say it gets easier, but that would be a total lie because I feel like every time I get to a point where I feel really comfortable with it, she wants to jump higher or go faster or ride like a greener horse, all making me nervous. So I'm sure it's a blast for trainers to be able to work around a mom like me at the barn. So, I mean, I guess the question is, why are we talking about switching barns now? It's not the dead of winter, but it's really cold here in Virginia. Um, and honestly, like this time of the year is kind of a common time for riders, moms to switch barns. If you are in a regular kind of show program, if you're showing regularly, it's the end of show season and you might be looking to find either a new horse for the upcoming season, or you may be looking at going to a barn that has a more specialized training program, right? There's a lot of different things you could be looking for in preparation of next show season. So lots of reasons that I've seen people kind of change and go their own way this time of the year. Now, the question as to why you would leave, there's like a million different reasons. Again, one could be similar to us. Chloe was not looking to move up, but like the trainer was changing their program. And so then we needed to have a horse to kind of adapt to that program. And there just wasn't a really good fit for her there. You might be leaving because wherever you are has shifted to a program or to a model, or they raise their prices and that no longer fits your family budget. Totally understandable, right? Facilities, you might be looking for something different than what your current barn offers. I know one of our friends at the barn where we are now, we used to have access to tons of trails, and then that access kind of got cut off, and that's really all she was doing. Not all she was doing, but that's what she loved doing with her horse. And so she switched to a facility that had miles and miles of trails, which makes sense. And also, let's just be honest, there are some times when that barn is just no longer a good fit for you, whether it is the barn, the trainer, the other family, the kids, whatever it is, it has just become not a happy place for you anymore. And I really thought about, do we put this out there? Because I've seen some articles lately, and if I can get my ish together, I will link them in the show notes, but about switching barns and when it's time to leave and all of these things. But at the more beginner level, which is where a lot of broke horse moms are, sometimes you leave a barn because it no longer feels like a place that you're excited to go to. And so we can sugarcoat the idea all that we want, but the truth is, leaving the trainers at these local barns and leaving these programs, it's hard and it's stressful, and everyone kind of takes it personally, even though everyone knows that it shouldn't be taken personally, right? It's not like requesting a different coach on your kiddo's soccer team, right? Or trying out for a different baseball team. It's very personal. Often you get very close with your trainer. You are doing things every single day when you come out to the barn that are very expensive and very dangerous. And so if you get to a point where something inside of you is just gnawing at you that this is no longer a good fit, then it's no longer a good fit, and that change has to be made. Um, I think the key in making this transition be a little easier for all parties involved is to, take an adult approach to leaving. And we can go over a couple of the ways that you might be able to do that. So, how do we make this gut wrenching experience that we will all go through at some point a little more palatable? Well, first of all, I did get some feedback from a trainer on Instagram. I had posted in my stories, like, trainers, moms, tell me about any experiences you've had of switching barns or how to make it easier. And this one trainer said, be honest about why you're leaving. And I think that is something definitely to lead with. And also, I think sometimes you have to sugarcoat, if you will, the reason that you're leaving just to avoid further conflict. And so this is obviously if you're leaving a barn where there's just some level of like animosity or not really jiving with the person who is in charge. You can kind of give the reason, like the primary reason that you're leaving, but I don't think it's important to like go into all of the nitty gritty of why you're leaving. Most likely, as a mom, you've had experiences at a barn to where not everything was perfection and ideal, right? But you were able to kind of navigate those things and roll with the punches. But then there comes a point where, for me, it's always, well, is this serving my kid? And as long as it is, then we're good to go. And so I think just being as honest as you can while also recognizing you don't need to like spill all the beans if that is not going to serve anyone in the long run, right? So be as honest as it makes sense for you to be about why you are leaving the barn. The other piece of it is really figuring out how to approach the trainer with this information. Again, we get really close to trainers. I feel like anyone I know that is showing at the local level, any of the moms I've connected with, it doesn't matter if they're in Virginia, Montana, Arizona, we get really tight with these trainers because they are pouring so much time, effort, energy, and love into our kids. And so that trainer and the best way to approach them. Now, for me, I always prefer to have the conversations in person, as much as it sucks often. But I would rather either have it in person or on the phone. I just think that's a way to really understand the emotion that's involved. You can hear it in the trainer's voice, the trainer can hear it in your voice. And it just, to me, is the most respectful way to do that communicating with someone who has given your kid a lot. Yes, you can text it if that, I guess, is what you feel comfortable with. But I would urge, if you're leaving a program that you've been at for a while, to really have a conversation so the trainer can see and feel your heart in that, I guess, evolution transition. The other thing that I think is really funny is I know some people that have left barns and they're like, don't tell the trainer where we're going. And I'm like, girl, we're going to know where you go because we all show at the same places. And so I just think that's like an interesting hill to die on, if you will, of like, that would be the least of my concerns is our trainer knowing where we're going to if I were leaving. In fact, like, I think it would help a trainer understand that you may have been looking for something different if the place that you're going is very different, right? So I don't think there needs to be a shroud of secrecy. That said, it's very dependent on the circumstances of why you're leaving. So take it all with a grain of salt, my friends. I'm just throwing out what I've heard from you, what I have seen, some of what we have experienced, and we can navigate it all together. I guess the other thing I wanted to tackle is like, why does it feel so personal? And I think it really is because everyone involved is so invested, right? The trainer, the owner of the barn, that's likely like their life. It is their livelihood. It is what they pour every ounce of themselves into. you as a parent, your child is your primary focus, your primary thing that you care about, right? So there's just two, I wouldn't even say competing factors, but when everyone cares so much, it's, it's not abnormal for it to be a little bit of like a heightened period of time. So you can kind of like squash some of the personalness by trying not to act differently when you see that trainer, when you see that owner, right? Really trying to invite them into conversations if that's something that you would have done normally. Don't talk trash behind anyone's back. The horse world is a very small world in local communities, so be respectful. You don't always have to explain every reason why you left to any Joe Schmo that asks, right? So I would say, as a mom, play your part in supporting that trainer, that barn, and that program by leaving as gracefully as possible. So, interestingly enough, when we're talking about feeling personal, one of our followers on Instagram responded to my question as to like, what's the wildest barn switching story you have? This person said their trainer had our lease pulled out from under us. It was awful when they switched barns. So, whatever that trainer was able to do ended the lease that these people had with a horse or pony, which, again, we don't know all the details, but knowing this person a little bit, I'm like, that is a lot to really throw into the mix of leaving a barn is also taking the animal that you were riding and likely had a bond with. So, okay, so we talked about like some of the sticky parts. Now we're going to talk about the part that Christine, our amazing trainer, suggested, and her point was really why people leave barns, but also recognizing the type of barn that you are choosing and making sure ahead of time that it meets all of your needs. So there are so many different types of barns. Some are great for like beginner lessons, right? To where that little 7-year-old that's never been on a horse can go and ride a pony, and that pony's not going to do anything, and super safe, right? Teaching the fundamentals. That's great. Then there's barns that are for intermediate riders where maybe you still don't need a lease or own a horse, but you can kind of get some reps in and maybe start doing some more, serious riding at that barn. Cool. Then you've got upper level, you've got different disciplines. And something that's really interesting is Chloe just fell into the discipline of jumping because that's what they did at the second barn that she went to. And I always wonder, well, would she ever entertain the idea of doing dressage or eventing? And she's played around with them a little, but that's something to think about too. If your kiddo becomes interested in a different discipline and your trainer doesn't train in that, you very well may need to switch barns to get them exposed to it. The other thing that's really interesting, because the barn that we're at right now, Christine does train humans as riders, but she spends much more of her time training horses and ponies. And if you're going to a facility where you are expecting for yourself to be trained and that trainer is not exceptionally skilled in that, that may be a mismatch. Or if you're going to a facility that's all about training the rider and maybe you're bringing a horse with you that hasn't been finished and isn't well trained, you may not be able to have that gap bridged at a barn that only trains humans. So it's really important to take kind of a high level view of where's your kiddo at? Do they have a horse? Where's that horse at? What are they going to need to achieve the goals that they set out? And making sure that the barn that you're switching to knows those things and also has the experience to be able to deliver. I think too, that's where the conversations are really important on the front end of switching, making sure that you're talking to the trainer, you're talking to your kid about what are your actual goals. I know our trainer, I don't know, a couple of months ago had a kiddo come and she was like, I want to be able to jump 3.6. That's my goal, is to get to 3.6. And Christine's like, good for you, girl, but I'm not the one that's going to be able to get you there. So having those conversations and having a trainer that's really honest about what they're capable of is really, really important. I think at the end of the day, the more open and honest the conversations that you have with the trainer or the barn owner, or both if they're the same person, I think that's really what sets up having a positive relationship to them. And I will say, it may not be the trainer who initiates those conversations. And if they don't, if we really want to set ourselves up for a positive relationship, it may very well be up to us to have those conversations, those goal setting conversations, those, hey, these are the shows we're looking to do next year. Is this feasible? What will you charge for that? They don't really know the questions that we have in our minds. So it really does take us kind of stepping out of our comfort zone into this world that we know very little about and asking those questions. So I am here to support you in having the most direct, respectful, and collaborative conversations that you can with your kiddo's trainer, because time and time again, I have seen where you can have really hard conversations and end those conversations on common ground, recognizing that you might have different perspectives, but you're both in it for the same reasons. So that's my 2 cents, probably a little more, on switching barns. It doesn't need to be some nasty move that breaks and cuts ties and all of that. There's definitely ways to approach it where it's a more positive experience and your kiddo can feel it as a moment of growth, and they can look back on it really fondly and look forward to seeing their old barn mates and their old trainer when they're out and about. Friend, thanks for listening to Broke Horse Moms, the podcast for all of us who swore this was just a phase. Want more? Head to brokehorsemoms.com and sign up for our virtual barn family newsletter. That's where I share behind-the-scenes extras, show season survival tips, gear recommendations, and horse mom life hacks. Basically, it's everything I wish someone had told me when Chloe first said she wanted to try horseback riding. I'll see you there.